Hello and welcome! It is Vintage Super League time once again. I'm Randy Bueller, joined by Eric Froelich. How are things, Efro?
I'm glad you're high in energy because I'm exhausted, but it is Vintage Super League night, so I'm excited to see some new brews. I hear that at least one person has some good spice going on this week.
Yes, I think spicy is the right word for my deck. I feel like I'm not supposed to give you too much information, but whatever. You probably already had me on not shops, not mentor, so whatever.
Yep, you've basically pigeonholed it down to only 1 or 100 decks.
Right, exactly. We had sort of spice last week. It was weird how 3 different Leovold decks showed up to play, which I think is a thing that you can legitimately do in Vintage now with the new BNR list. I don't know that I'm expecting 7. I'll be shocked if there's 3 more in the set, I guess. I don't know if you had much of a chance to watch last week's show.
No, I definitely watched it in its entirety. Yeah, it's weird because we haven't seen a lot of bug in Vintage Super League kind of period, except also the last time we saw a Leovold deck was in the playoffs last season, and myself and Rodrigo both came with Leovold again, and we actually paired off in the finals or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. Maybe it was actually not the playoffs yet or the wild card round or something. But I know that we were both 2-0 and played against each other, both playing Leovold decks there as well. So Leovold doesn't show up very often, but when he does, he shows up in large numbers and does pretty well apparently.
I hadn't thought of it quite that way. All right, we are in Brave New Vintage Metagame. If you missed last week's show, there was some cool tech on display. But big picture here, the BNR changed a lot of things in Vintage. Yawgmoth's Bargain, unrestricted. Monastery Mentor, restricted. Thorn of Amethyst, restricted. That's the brave new world we're exploring here. We called the season a Brewer's Challenge. We all agreed we were going to try different stuff. Nobody's going to run the same deck twice. What was your reaction when you first saw that BNR announcement, Eric?
I feel like every time we've seen a BNR announcement for Vintage the past, how many years is it? Since it's the beginning of VSL for sure.
Yeah, I guess I don't. 3 years plus.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have much data from before VSL because I wasn't kind of pinned to it. I played Vintage, but I didn't pay attention to the banned restricted list because it was, when a cool Vintage tournament would come up, I would try to play it, but it wasn't, really on Magic Online. It wasn't as much on my radar. Yeah. But since VSL has started, I feel like every BNR change has kind of hit the nail on the head. Nothing I've been disappointed with. I like the fact that we're now, we've been introducing cards back in. Well, I think Thirst for Knowledge came back as well, in a previous BNR announcement, which, again, has proven to, of course, not be out of control, at least not yet. And so I think that's been a real nice addition to have, just access to those type of cards again. And Yawgmoth's Bargain that's a cool card. I mean, I got no problems with seeing more Yawgmoth's Bargains being played. I'm a big fan of what that card does. I played it in Standard when it first got printed, and it's a lot of fun. And hasn't seemed to ruin any Vintage yet, so that's certainly a good thing. Which is great. That's what you want to see. You want to have more options, especially on those really cool cards, and potential to do some busted things that aren't completely out of control, that completely warps the format. So. Been all good changes. Mentor, of course, still a deck. You have to downgrade a little bit because Monastery Mentor is a ridiculous creature, but that deck is still ticking with some other threats, and of course, Shop's not going anywhere. I mean, we just keep restricting cards. I think this is Trinisphere, Chalice, Lodestone. I mean, everything just they keep restricting cards. It's just this Mistress Workshop card is so good that
that's fair. I kind of like the way the Workshop deck is positioned now. It's kind of the beatdown in the format, right? It plays a bunch of creatures, and so many of the lock pieces are restricted at this point that they're not reliably just going to lock you out of the game or prevent you from ever casting a spell. You just get to interact with them a little bit more. Now, they may be killing you on turn 3 with, Precursor Golem coming over for 9, but I don't know. It feels a little more fair. It feels like it's a little more interactive, and that's certainly what I look for in Magic.
I don't like that word for it. I don't like calling it fair because what Mistress Workshop does, getting a Black Lotus every turn. But sure, no, I'm not arguing. I don't have a problem with it either. I'm not saying that Workshop needs to go anywhere. I think fair is a very wrong word, I guess, to use for it. But I do agree with everything else you said in that There's a lot of ways to build workshop decks. They're not completely overpowered by any stretch. They're very good. You can play that beatdown version, but that's not the only way you can go. You can still play a smokestack version where you are kind of locking people out, but they get to actually play their spells a little bit more often, which is nice. Like not having 4 Chalice and 4 Thorns means at least, I get to play the game a little bit before you crush me. And, Precursor Golem is the fact that that's a card. That's a cool thing. Like I definitely have no issue with stuff like that happening. We've seen like Foundry Inspector show up even before Thorn went away, and that list was winning the big vintage tournament out in Europe, kind of like an affinity version. I saw Rich Shea doing well in the league last week with a metal worker version. So lots of different things you can still do at shops. The card is still completely busted, but it's okay to do busted things. Like exactly what you said, this is vintage. Like, yeah, let's do busted things, but at least we can both play Magic when someone's doing that busted thing.
All right, so the way VSL is working this season, each night we've got 4 players. So Eric and I are both going to be playing tonight. In addition, we are going to be joined by Rachel Agnes and Steven Menendian. It actually randomly worked out. There's 3 people in the league this season who have won VSL at some point in the previous 6 seasons, and all 3 of us are playing tonight. Eric has done it a couple of times. Steve won the very first season, and I won the weirdo double elimination season 3. That LSV would, of course, chip in at this point is not canon, but it is. Meanwhile, Rachel Agnes joining us, who had a pretty good run last season. So that's the crew. All of us are going to play. It's a full round robin, which just means this is 3 of our matches. So every 3 weeks, everybody plays 3 matches. Then we submit new decks. We run it back again. By the end of the regular season, everyone will have 9 matches played, and we'll just see who's got the best record. Top 4 records will go to the playoffs, and then we'll do the familiar ladder-style playoff we've done in the past, where 3 plays 4, the winner plays 2, the winner of that plays whoever won the regular season.
Have we discussed what we're doing for the bottom yet? Is that, or is it just kind of assumed that it's just whoever has the worst record type thing? Or
well, there's no relegation. Is the short answer to your question? I think we just decided. We wanted people to brew. We wanted people to feel like they're not playing it safe and guarding against finishing in last. So there's no relegation.
We could go with the bottom 4 playoff like we had last season. It's kind of cool, but yeah, I guess that's not really relevant.
We are, and if we get ties, which is kind of likely a tie for a playoff spot, we're just playing more Magic. I mean, we'll figure out how much more Magic we need to play when we see how many people wind up in that tie. But that is the plan for the season. We did start last week. We mentioned this a little bit, but we can show you the standings at this point. Standings have 8 people at 0-0 at this point, but we do have 4 players who have finished off the first third of their season. So it's Reed Duke who is in first place, sitting on 3-0. Rich Shea in pretty good shape at 2-1, certainly on track. If he manages to run that back 2 more times, he will find himself in the playoffs. Rodrigo with the 1-2 and Kevin Cron with the 0-3. No special significance attached to the fact that Reed, quote unquote, won the group last week. He won his first 3 matches. That's all that means. And we did have the full spectrum of records last week, although obviously it could work out that we have 3 2-1s, 3 1-2s. Nobody goes 3-0 or 0-3. All kinds of record permutations are possible, but that's how things are going to work. Last bit of housekeeping, just to make sure everybody knows what's going on. Next week, we get to see the last 4 players come back. So wound up with kind of an old school pro theme with Bob and Dave and Paul being joined by VSL newcomer Aaron Campbell. So that should be a fun week for sure.
Bob dressing up for VSL. I like it.
I like it. These players, all 4 of these are capable of coming up with a brew too. I mean, Paul's range is famously wider than the format. Dave has certainly brought some spicy numbers from time to time. Yeah, I don't know. Aaron is notorious for playing Dredge, but I mean, she knows what she signed up for. She only gets to run Dredge once, or maximum of 1 time.
I'm hoping we see 3 different Bazaar decks but only one of them is Dredge.
That's kind of where I'm at. I kind of expect her to be on something with Bazaar Baghdad, but probably not Dredge yet. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I'm not sure what it'll be, but I think that would be kind of cool. Like if it's just 3 Bazaar decks.
Yeah, no, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
I do also want to give a shout out to Cool Stuff Inc. We do have a sponsor for this season. That was actually the sponsorship put us over our funding goal for the season. Let us launch basically as soon after the BNR announcement as we could put things together. So thank you very much to coolstuffinc.com. They've got cool stuff in stock, so check them out. Now, what are you looking for this week, Eric? You've probably you didn't know who you were going to be playing against when you submitted your deck, but you've known this group setup for a while now. Do you have specific expectations? I mean, I'll ask you about our first players to start with, Rachel and Steve.
Well, Steve was definitely the type of player who you kind of felt in the early seasons you can pigeonhole into a pretty small range that, it was going to be a blue deck. There was a good chance it was going to be something in the Doomsday range, but it could be any blue deck. And right. Since then has really just opened up. Like, here it is. Like, I can play anything. I'll come with shops. I'll come. Like, you can't just put me on a deck. So, you tell him this is a brewer's paradise. The format has just changed dramatically. I still would put him on blue if I had to pick something, but I expect him to come with something on the spicier range of blue decks. Okay. If he came with Doomsday again or something like that, wouldn't shock me at all. And we've seen Rachel play. I think this is her 6th or so week playing, and she's come with Mentor and Mentor and Mentor and Mentor and Mentor. So, like, if I had to put her on a deck, I would say Dredge. No, I would go with Mentor. But she's also a player who I think could come with Dredge. I mean, we've seen her talk about it quite a bit, and there were some issues with some of the cards and whatnot. But, she's shown, a pretty good talent for playing this Mentor deck, and she's played a lot of mirrors last season and definitely understood what she was doing with that card. So coming with like a 3 or 4 color kind of blue control deck that plays Mentor and possibly cards like Young Pyromancer, or maybe just goes kind of that Jace Snapcaster route, something in that range of like a little bit more aggressive blue deck wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if she ends up going like the Delver Young Pyromancer route, that wouldn't surprise me, but I would expect a more aggressive blue deck. And I would expect to see the card Monastery Mentor if I had to guess.
I agree with you on the Rachel read, and I think that Rich Hay's taken to using the name Turbo Xerox to refer to that category of decks, right? Can't really call it a Mentor deck. It's only got the one Mentor, right? Maybe it's got Young Pyromancers now, but the key to the sort of, you called it an aggressive blue deck, and I feel like there's definitely this sort of cluster of builds all around low land count, all the cantrips. Right, and then, okay, what am I doing to take advantage of the fact that I have all these cantrips? Maybe it's, hopefully I have the one Mentor and then some Young Pyros or whatever. You talk about Steve coming on a blue deck, though, and I feel like, well, that's the most likely blue deck for Rachel. Steve, he could be on, let's call it big blue, right? Maybe it's Mana Drains or Gifts Ungiven or some of the more expensive blue cards.
Yeah, I would expect a more controlling blue deck.
Control strategy, right? Yep. Rather than, I mean, the Turbo Xerox deck is kind of a beatdown deck.
Yeah, I agree with that, for sure.
Then there's the whole combo side of blue, right? Most of the combo decks are blue. Not all of them, but Paradoxical Outcome seems to be certainly the most feared combo card. It's the reason we had so many Leovolts last week, and probably the most effective combo card as well, and obviously a blue card. So you've got the combo side of blue. I feel like Steve's going to be somewhere in there. I've got Steve on something in the combo blue space. Maybe it's Outcome. Maybe it's Doomsday. Although, I don't know. I feel like he's on something outcome related.
Doomsday is certainly a combo deck, but to me it's always felt very much a control deck. I mean, it does just sit there. It doesn't actually play a lot of win conditions. I mean, it is going to combo off, quote unquote, but the combo is just casting Doomsday. I mean, that is the whole combo. And what you're going to go get involves things like an Ancestral Recall and a Black Lotus. So it's not like you're like, I've got all these combo cards. Like, no, you just have the busted card. So, like, for me, when I say that I expect Steve to play, like, a very controlling blue deck, I put Doomsday in that category. But, I mean, you are correct. It is a combo deck.
Should be fun. I know I'm certainly looking forward to it. And then, obviously, Eric and I will be up second. So, we'll be the second match. We'll play against each other. I think we've got today's full schedule scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So, if you're curious who is going to play whom and when, you can get there. We will have deck lists published after the second round. So, all the players are blind. We don't know each other's deck lists until after we've all played around and effectively shown them to you guys. Sounds like our first match is ready. Let's get down to the action.